Wife betrays and humiliates her millionaire husband after tragic accident, but he comes back stronger than ever. Before the story begins, comment below which city you're watching the video from. We love getting to know our viewers. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more exciting stories. Enjoy the story and see you soon. The road stretched out before Lucas in the grey light of dawn. He was driving alone, returning from an exhausting meeting, mentally reviewing the details of his latest case. A brilliant lawyer, Lucas was known for his dedication to his work, his unbeatable arguments, and the firmness he brought to every word spoken in court. But that morning, his thoughts were distracted, restless. He felt a weight on his chest, as if an invisible storm were gathering around him. The sharp curve appeared suddenly, and Lucas had only a second to realize he was going too fast. Everything happened in a blur. The car skidding, the harsh impact, the oppressive silence of a world spinning around him. When he opened his eyes again, he was in the hospital, enveloped in a cold, white light. He tried to move his legs, but an absolute emptiness had taken over his body. His muscles didn't respond. His legs felt non-existent. A nurse approached, and with a compassionate look murmured, "Lucas, you suffered a severe spinal injury. The team is doing everything they can, but there is a possibility you may not walk again." Shock and disbelief transformed into a whirlwind of emotions. Lucas tried to absorb those words, but everything felt like a distant fog. He who had always prided himself on his strength and control over his life was now confined to a bed, unable to move, dependent on others for the most basic things. Amid all that pain, the only constant presence was his wife, Mariana, who held his hand and promised day after day that they would face everything together. At first, Mariana's presence was a comfort. Seeing her familiar face beside the bed kept him grounded in reality and gave him the strength to endure the pain and the difficult news. But over time, Lucas began to notice small changes in her. Her gaze wasn't as fixed on him. Her touch no longer carried the same strength. When Lucas tried to talk about the future, Mariana's expression would close off, and he saw in her eyes a mix of confusion and apprehension. One night, she came home late, saying she'd had to stay longer at work, but her tone was evasive, almost cold. Lucas began to feel that something was changing between them, and unable to express himself physically or even act as he used to, he felt helpless. The sense of loneliness became even more intense than the physical pain. Over time, Lucas began to realize that the life he had known was slipping from his grasp, and not only because of the accident. It was as if, in losing his mobility, he was also losing his place in the world. He felt a growing distance between him and Mariana, but he tried not to show it, hoping she would come to terms with the situation by his side. As the weeks dragged on, Lucas's struggle became twofold: the battle against his own body, which stubbornly refused to respond, and the emotional struggle of watching Mariana grow more distant. She seemed tired, avoiding his gaze, and their conversations had become short and superficial. Lucas, who had always believed in the strength of their relationship, began to feel a suffocating doubt. The doctor's visits with updates on his condition became a grim routine. His hopes for the future were uncertain, and he began to understand that his recovery would be neither quick nor guaranteed. With each new report, Lucas felt the pain of impossibility and, more than ever, the need to find support in Mariana. But there, in that hospital room, with an uncertain future ahead and a growing sense of abandonment, Lucas realized that something fundamental in his life was changing forever. The weeks following his diagnosis brought a routine of painful therapies and a constant anticipation of any sign of recovery. Lucas still clung to a spark of hope, holding on to the idea that somehow everything might return to normal. Mariana's presence, though distant, was a reminder of the life he once had. But with each of her visits, Lucas sensed something amiss. A palpable absence in her eyes and her tone of voice. The tension between them grew with each passing day. Her responses became evasive, her touch mechanical. Lucas couldn't shake the painful thoughts that he might be losing, in addition to his mobility, the woman he loved. One sleepless night, a mix of anguish and desperate curiosity overcame him, and he reached for Mariana's phone, left beside the bed. With a pounding heart, he scrolled through recent messages, and one in particular caught his attention. It was from Raul, an old work colleague, someone he knew and had considered trustworthy. The exchanged messages were filled with intimacy and secrets Lucas would never have imagined seeing there. He continued reading, stunned, each line feeling like a stab. The mentioned meetings, the described smiles, the promises that no one needed to know. All of it was a cruel revelation that Mariana was having an affair. When Mariana returned to the room, she found Lucas with silent tears streaming down his face, her phone in his hand, his expression unmasking the pain and indignation he felt. She stood frozen, as if knowing that the words he demanded were impossible to say. Without preamble, he asked if she had anything to say, anything to explain the messages. Mariana sighed, looking away, and after a long silence, she confessed that yes, she had been involved with Raul. Rage and anguish erupted within Lucas. He felt betrayed, not only as a husband, but as a man, as a person. In the midst of his vulnerability and inability to react physically, the betrayal struck as a devastating blow. He wanted to scream, to get up, to leave, but all he could do was confront the truth Mariana had laid before him. She couldn't bear the reality of his new life, of the limitations he now faced. Mariana attempted to justify herself, saying she didn't know how to cope, that her pain was also immense. But her words only deepened the void within Lucas, who now felt that their marriage was unraveling irreversibly. He saw her as someone who couldn't or wouldn't share the burden of his hardships, someone who sought solace in another rather than standing by his side. That night became a turning point. Mariana left the room in a deathly silence, and Lucas lay there alone, staring at the ceiling, absorbing every detail of her betrayal. He felt more alone than ever, a man who had already lost so much, now watching his marriage, his emotional foundation, crumble before his eyes. He tried to remember a time when their love had felt strong enough to face any obstacle, but that memory now seemed distant and unreal. With the dawn, something inside him began to shift. Still devastated, Lucas realized that physical pain and paralysis were not the only battles he would face. Betrayal, loss, and a complete redefinition of who he was now formed the new landscape of his life. He knew this was only the beginning of a long, difficult journey, but one thing was clear: he would not let himself be defined by the pain Mariana had caused him. From that day forward, Lucas closed his heart to her. After the night of the revelation, Lucas felt emotionally numb, as if his heart were encased in a layer of ice. He avoided thinking about Mariana and focused on simply surviving each day. However, the weeks of physical recovery wore him down, and each physical therapy session felt like a test of endurance, not just for his body, but also for his mind and self-esteem. It was during this period of intense pain and exhaustion that he met Sophia, the nurse assigned to oversee his rehabilitation. At first, he saw her as just another professional, someone who, like many others, would do her job and leave, leaving him alone with his thoughts once again. But Sophia proved to be different from the first day. With a firm posture and calm gaze, she exuded a serenity that softened Lucas's emotional defenses. Sophia greeted him with a warm smile, patiently explaining each step of the process. Lucas had become accustomed to quick, to-the-point conversations with doctors, but Sophia made a point of explaining in detail what each movement and exercise meant, how each small effort could bring a positive impact. There was a kindness in the way she treated him, a sense of respect and understanding that felt genuine. In the days that followed, Lucas noticed that Sophia treated each patient as a unique story. She observed their reactions, listened to their concerns, and encouraged every effort, even when progress seemed nearly invisible. With her, Lucas began to see that small victories, like moving a muscle that had once felt lifeless, had their own value. What began as a professional relationship slowly took on a personal quality that Lucas hadn't expected. Sophia, always willing to listen, listened when he spoke of his frustration and feelings of helplessness. During one particularly discouraging session, she sat beside him and shared a bit of her own story. Coming from a humble family, Sophia had learned early on that adversities could be overcome as long as they were faced with patience and courage. Her strength didn't come from a life without difficulties, but from a life where she had learned to endure and move forward. Lucas found a quiet inspiration in Sophia's words. She didn't see him as someone broken. On the contrary, she believed he was capable of finding, even in paralysis, a new way to reconnect with himself. For the first time since the accident, he felt a glimmer of genuine hope, not from a physical recovery, but from a change in his perception of himself. As the days went on, Sophia became a presence Lucas eagerly anticipated. It wasn't just about the routine of physical therapy sessions, but the bond forming between them. In their conversations, Lucas began to open up, revealing layers of emotions he had kept locked away. She encouraged him to view each movement, each pain endured, as part of the process of rebuilding himself. Lucas knew it was a long journey, but now he felt he wasn't entirely alone. While Sophia maintained an impeccable professionalism, there was something more in her presence. She believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself, and that made all the difference. The quiet strength she conveyed made him want in some way to be worthy of her confidence. And so, over time, Lucas began to find a small light amidst the darkness. The paralysis, the betrayal, the loss of control over his life, all of it still weighed heavily on him, but alongside Sophia, he started to see that perhaps there was something more ahead, something worth reaching for. In this initial phase of rehabilitation, he wasn't just trying to regain movement. He was beginning, albeit hesitantly, to rebuild himself. Lucas's progress in his sessions with Sophia began to show, albeit slowly and gradually. Each movement achieved, each advancement, was a silent victory that strengthened his resolve to keep going. However, with each passing day, Mariana's distance became more evident. She had become a rare presence, and Lucas was no longer surprised by her excuses to avoid visiting him, or by the vacant look in her eyes whenever she was by his side. The distance between them grew deeper, shifting from emotional absence to physical withdrawal. Mariana would stay out for long hours, returning home only to sleep or to sit quietly beside Lucas, as if her presence were an unbearable obligation. Lucas, still fragile, tried to ignore it, focusing on his recovery and on Sophia's presence, who, in contrast, was consistent and dedicated. Then one night, Mariana finally voiced the truth Lucas had already sensed. After an especially exhausting day of therapy, Lucas found her in the living room, packing a suitcase. She told him, almost casually, that she needed some time to think, that she felt a lot of pressure, and that time apart would be beneficial for both of them. Lucas, too drained to argue or protest, simply nodded, accepting her decision. He knew Mariana was no longer a part of his life as she once was, and the love they had once shared now felt like only a shadow. The hurt still lingered, but for the first time, he felt that her departure might actually be a relief. The marriage that had once meant so much to him now seemed like a memory from another life. a bond that was gradually unraveling. Mariana left without looking back, and Lucas remained alone, feeling a strange sense of peace, as if that moment had been inevitable. He finally understood that her presence was no longer a source of support, and that perhaps her absence could open space for a new perspective, a new beginning. The days that followed brought a new routine. Without Mariana by his side, he allowed himself to grieve the relationship he had lost, yet he also felt less pressure, more freedom to focus on his own recovery. His connection with Sophia now held greater significance. She continued supporting him with the same care and attention, and he found himself increasingly drawing strength from this new friendship that was forming. Each physical therapy session became a reminder that he was on a journey of personal reconstruction. The process was painful and slow, but now Lucas no longer bore the weight of Mariana's judgment or expectations. Sophia was by his side, present for each small victory and each setback. It was with her that Lucas allowed himself to share his pains and frustrations, and it was in her words and gestures that he found comfort. Over time, Lucas realized that Mariana, with all her absence and coldness, had ceased to be essential in his life. He still faced the sadness of watching a relationship crumble, but alongside Sophia, he felt less alone. Her steady, calm support helped him to see his own strength. And in that period of enforced solitude, Lucas began to understand that perhaps he no longer needed Mariana to find peace. Lucas's days became a routine of physical challenges and introspection. Mariana's absence was now a constant, yet Sophia was always present, her warm smile and patient demeanor helping him face each obstacle. Over time, he realized Sophia was more than just a dedicated nurse. She was a constant presence who had become essential in his life, someone who seemed to understand his deepest struggles without him needing to voice them. One particularly hard afternoon, Lucas suffered an intense pain crisis. Frustration and exhaustion overtook him, and he felt an almost uncontrollable urge to give up. As tears fell, Sophia quietly approached, sitting beside him. Without saying a word, she held his hand, allowing him to feel her support without any pressure or expectations. That silent connection made Lucas realize something profound. Sophia saw him fully, his pain, his weaknesses, and his strength. Her presence not only comforted him, but also inspired him to face pain differently. Lucas began to understand that rehabilitation wasn't just about regaining movement, but about reclaiming the will to live and the capacity to appreciate each small victory. Sophia encouraged him to celebrate every progress, however minor, and slowly Lucas learned to see these moments as personal achievements. As the days went by, Lucas opened up more to Sophia, and their conversations grew intimate and deep. Sophia shared details of her life, her humble childhood, and the challenges she faced to become a nurse. She told him how each obstacle had shaped her worldview, teaching her to value perseverance and resilience. For Lucas, these stories were invigorating, revealing that true strength came from within, from each choice he made to confront his difficulties. In one of these conversations, Sophia mentioned a difficult experience from her youth, when she had faced the loss of a loved one. The pain, she explained, never truly goes away, but it's possible to learn to live with it and to transform it into motivation to keep moving forward. Lucas listened intently, absorbing her words and finding a new meaning for his own losses. The connection between them grew naturally, without hurry, marked by mutual admiration. Sophia didn't see Lucas as a patient or a limited man. She saw him as someone on a journey of overcoming, a story of rebuilding that was only beginning. Lucas, in turn, saw in Sophia a light that illuminated his darkest days, someone who restored his hope without asking for anything in return. As the days went on, Lucas realized that bit by bit, he was beginning to feel something he had long forgotten: gratitude. Gratitude for each movement, for each of Sophia's smiles, for each conversation that gave him a new perspective. Her presence, more than just giving him strength to continue, offered him a new way of seeing life, a vision focused on simplicity and the value of small things. Gradually, Lucas stopped looking to Mariana for support that never came, and instead began finding in himself, with Sophia's silent encouragement, the strength to carry on. It was a long process, full of ups and downs, but he felt that with her by his side, he had a new chance to rediscover himself. Lucas knew there was still a long journey ahead, but now he was willing to take each step, finding in Sophia not just a friend, but an inspiration that made him want to live. Lucas's progress in physical therapy continued, albeit slowly, with each day bringing a new sense of accomplishment. Under Sophia's attentive guidance, he had begun to regain control over small movements in his legs and, more importantly, over his own emotions. The feeling of defeat that had lingered since the accident was gradually giving way to a renewed strength. Sophia noticed the change in Lucas. During their sessions, he no longer approached the exercises mechanically. He showed determination, a spark of life that she knew was the first step toward him feeling whole again. And as she closely observed his evolution, Lucas absorbed every word of encouragement from her, every smile that motivated him to push a little further. Their conversations became more intimate and revealing. One afternoon, with the weather especially pleasant, Sophia encouraged him to go outside to the rehabilitation center's garden to enjoy the sun. There, sitting outdoors, Lucas opened up, sharing his fears and the sense of collapse he felt when he realized Mariana had abandoned him. He confessed that for a long time, he believed his identity was tied to his career and his marriage, and losing those two pillars had left him feeling lost. Sophia listened attentively, without interruption, and when he finished, she spoke with her usual calmness. "Lucas, your life doesn't have to be defined by what you've lost. There's a world of possibilities beyond what you once thought essential. It's hard to accept now, but perhaps, in rediscovering yourself, you'll see that there's much more within you than you ever imagined." Her words resonated deeply with Lucas. For the first time, he began to consider that perhaps his identity didn't need to be limited to what he had before the accident. He could build a new story, with new purposes and new perspectives. This shift in mindset began to reflect in his actions. He started putting more effort into therapy, asking questions about the recovery process, and even setting small goals, like moving his feet more or strengthening his leg muscles. Sophia saw in Lucas the strength of someone who had been broken, but was willing to rebuild himself, piece by piece. And in this process, she became not only his friend and confidant, but also a true inspiration. He felt that, with her support, he could reach new horizons, and the strength he found within himself was nourished by the confidence Sophia showed in his potential. In a moment of reflection, Lucas began to compare his life before and after the accident. He realized that in the past, he had been constantly on the go, focused on his career and professional ambitions. But now, he had learned to value the present moment, to appreciate simple things like a sunset or the sound of birds in the garden. This new perspective brought an unexpected sense of lightness. He felt emotionally stronger, and this inner strength reflected in the small physical advances he was making. Lucas knew it wasn't just his body undergoing rehabilitation, it was his mind, his heart. He was becoming a different person, more resilient, less bound to the illusions of control that had once defined his life. At the end of that day, Lucas looked at Sophia with deep gratitude. He knew that without her, this process would have been much more painful. She had helped him not only face physical pain, but also reevaluate his relationship with himself and the world around him. The journey was still long, but Lucas was stronger than he ever imagined, and with Sophia by his side, he felt that, for the first time in a long time, he was truly alive. Lucas's progress was visible. With Sophia's unwavering support, he was gradually reclaiming his strength both physically and emotionally. Though each step forward was slow, he felt more whole and confident, proud of every achievement. However, in the midst of this new phase of recovery, an unexpected visit stirred painful memories and conflicting emotions. Mariana appeared without warning after weeks of no direct contact. She entered Lucas's room with a restrained, almost rehearsed expression, and he could sense the discomfort in her gaze. She seemed nervous but tried to display an artificial calm. Lucas, on the other hand, remained composed, observing her without looking away, yet he didn't stand up or make any gesture to embrace her. The woman he had once loved intensely now felt like a stranger, someone who had chosen a different path when he had needed support the most. In a controlled voice, Mariana began speaking about the confused feeling she had been facing since the accident and the pressure that it had placed on their relationship. She explained that she had needed time to understand what she wanted, and that now she was willing to start over. She moved closer to Lucas, softening her tone as if expecting him to welcome her back without question. Lucas listened patiently, but his expression remained unchanged. The peace and confidence he had found since Mariana's departure couldn't be easily shaken. When she finished speaking, Lucas took a deep breath and replied firmly that he wasn't interested in starting over. He told her that over time he had learned that his worth didn't depend on what others thought of him, and that, despite his limitations, he was finally at peace. Mariana, visibly surprised and shaken, tried to insist, saying that he still needed her, that together they could overcome everything. But Lucas had already broken free from the emotional chains that had once bound him to her. With Sophia by his side, he had rediscovered his inner strength and self-worth, and now he knew he deserved more than a relationship marred by betrayal and abandonment. Resolute, he explained that during his recovery process, he had found a new meaning in life, a meaning that didn't include someone who chose to leave when he needed them most. Mariana fell silent, unable to argue, stunned by the transformation she saw in Lucas. He was no longer the fragile, insecure man he had once been. Now he radiated a serene confidence, a clear sense of who he was and what he wanted for himself. She tried to press one last time, but Lucas gently cut her off, making it clear that there was no longer a place for her in his life. Mariana realized that this time there was no going back. Defeated, she left the room in silence, her expression revealing a mixture of regret and frustration. After Mariana's departure, Lucas felt a wave of relief wash over him. He knew that this decision was final and that he had at last freed himself from the emotional ties that bound him to a painful past. Sophia, who had respectfully observed the scene, approached Lucas with a gentle smile, offering the support he knew he could always rely on. With that painful chapter behind him, Lucas felt stronger and freer to move forward. After Lucas's definitive rejection, Mariana felt lost. The security she had always found in her husband's emotional and financial stability had crumbled. Seeking some form of comfort, she turned to Raúl, the man she had been involved with during Lucas's darkest period. But when she reached out to him, she didn't find the support she had hoped for. When she finally arranged to meet Raúl in a quiet cafe, he greeted her with an air of coldness. Mariana explained the end of her marriage, hinting that perhaps now they could officially be together since both were free. But Raúl, with a blunt and disinterested tone, cut her off. He had never intended to pursue a serious commitment. To him, The relationship with Mariana had been nothing more than a distraction, something light and uncomplicated. His words struck her like a bucket of ice water, and Mariana felt humiliated and betrayed, just as Lucas must have felt upon discovering her infidelity. Raúl made it clear that he had no desire to continue their relationship, nor to take on any responsibility. Without hesitation, he stood up, bid her a brief goodbye, and left, leaving Mariana alone with an overwhelming sense of emptiness. In shock, she realized that in her attempt to rebuild her life outside of her marriage, she had ended up isolated and without options. The choices she had made now revealed their true cost: loneliness and a lack of support. Mariana returned home, feeling utterly forsaken. What once seemed like freedom had now become an emotional prison. She, who had believed she was independent and capable of moving forward, found herself awash in a storm of emotions: regret, shame, loneliness. The place that had once been her home now felt empty and cold. With no one else to lean on, Mariana sought refuge with her sister Camila, a woman with a simple nature but a big heart, with whom she hadn't had a deep conversation in a long time. Seeing her in such a state, Camila didn't judge. Instead, she opened her door and welcomed her sister with compassion. She listened patiently to Mariana's outpouring of tears and regrets. In the days that followed, Camila helped Mariana reflect on her choices and the impact they had had on both her own life and Lucas's. Camila encouraged her to break free from the chains of the past and rebuild her life independently, without relying on others to define her worth or happiness. For the first time, Mariana realized that she had never truly sought to build something on her own. She had always leaned on Lucas, then on Raúl. But now, with her sister's support, she began to understand the importance of standing strong on her own. This conversation sparked a new awareness in Mariana. Amid her suffering, she started to consider the idea of starting over, this time through her own efforts. The prospect of living without the illusions of security she had once clung to began to feel less frightening and more like an opportunity for redemption. Mariana decided that rather than continuing to seek support in others, she would work to find her own path, learning to live with more humility and purpose. Though she was only at the beginning of this journey, she felt a new strength emerging within her, fueled by her sister's compassion and encouragement. As the months passed, Lucas continued his journey of recovery, strengthening not only his body, but also his mind and spirit. Every small victory was celebrated with Sophia, who, more than a caregiver, had become a constant and inspiring companion. Their bond, initially rooted in trust and necessity, had evolved into something deeper and more genuine. Gradually, Lucas resumed his professional activities, starting with simpler cases that he could handle remotely. The feeling of returning to work made him feel useful and whole once again, and the new outlook he had developed during his rehabilitation helped him approach life with more patience and gratitude. Work was no longer a way to prove his worth to the world, but a way to contribute, to feel part of something larger. Sophia remained by his side throughout this process. She was the one encouraging him not to give up, listening to him patiently in moments of doubt and helping him regain emotional balance. Over time, Lucas realized that his admiration for Sophia had grown into something more profound, something he hesitated to name. She was a presence that calmed his heart and brought him a sense of belonging, a peace he had never felt before. One spring day, after a physical therapy session, Sophia and Lucas decided to take a walk through the park next to the rehabilitation center. It was a sunny day, and the air was filled with floral scents. They walked side by side in silence, savoring the tranquility of the moment. At one point, Lucas turned to Sophia with a shy smile and thanked her for all the support she had given him, for each moment she had dedicated to him, for every encouraging word that had helped him stand up again. Sophia returned his smile, warm and full of understanding, and held his hand for a brief moment. That simple touch conveyed a clear, intense message, a feeling they had silently shared over the months, now needing no concealment. The silence between them was filled with a deep and genuine emotion, something that needed no words to be understood. From that moment, Lucas and Sophia allowed themselves to explore what they felt for each other. Gradually, their lives intertwined naturally and without rush, both respecting the time needed to heal their own scars and rediscovering love in a much more mature and sincere way. Lucas felt that Sophia was a true life partner, someone with whom he could share his joys, pains, and dreams without reservation. And she, in turn, saw in Lucas the strength and affection she had always hoped to have by her side. Together, they built a routine filled with love and companionship. It was not just about supporting each other, but about a genuine partnership where they both found motivation to grow and face life's challenges together. Lucas was finally at peace, feeling that he had found a new purpose in life, something far beyond what he could have imagined before the accident. He knew there would still be difficulties ahead and that full recovery might never come, but with Sophia by his side, that no longer frightened him. They were ready to move forward, side by side, confident that love and resilience would guide them through whatever path they chose to walk together. Some time had passed, and Lucas and Sophia had settled into a peaceful routine, blending love, companionship, and shared goals. Together they were building a new life, celebrating each moment and each small step they took side by side. Lucas, now stronger and more at peace, understood that while his body still had limitations, his spirit was free and renewed. With Sophia, he had found a true love born from empathy, understanding, and mutual admiration. One evening, as they returned from a walk downtown, Lucas and Sophia decided to stop at a cafe to rest. The atmosphere was cozy, filled with lively conversations, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. As they waited for their order, Lucas noticed a familiar figure across the room. It was Mariana. Mariana sat alone at a table near the window, dressed simply and looking serene. She was working there as a server, carrying orders with a calm expression, quite different from the image he had of her. For a moment their eyes met. Mariana recognized him, and upon seeing Sophia by his side, she looked down, a hint of shame on her face. But she quickly regained her composure and approached them. In a quiet voice, she greeted them, and Lucas noticed that something was different about her. She seemed more humble. Her posture reflected someone who had faced her own mistakes and accepted the consequences of her choices. She briefly shared with them the new life she had built, without bitterness, but with a sincerity Lucas respected. She explained that after losing everything, she had started working at the cafe, determined to rebuild her life with dignity, without relying on anyone else. Lucas, feeling a strange sense of peace, looked at Mariana with compassion. He realized she had gone through a transformation similar to his own, that she too had found a new path and a new way of facing life. With a serene smile, Lucas wished her happiness and peace, without resentment or bitterness, simply with a sincere hope that she would find the same serenity he had found with Sophia. Moved, Mariana nodded in thanks, her eyes revealing a mix of gratitude and acceptance. As she returned to her duties, Lucas felt that they had finally closed that painful chapter. Mariana was now on her own path, and he, alongside Sophia, had the chance to build a life that was both full and genuine. Lucas and Sophia left the cafe hand in hand, and as they stepped outside, they felt the cool evening air embrace them. They continued in silence, but it was not an empty silence. It was a meaningful moment, a quiet celebration of the peace they had found and the love that bound them together. Lucas knew that no matter how difficult the challenges he had faced, They had led him to this new chapter, stronger and truer than he could have ever imagined. In that final encounter, Lucas and Mariana had found redemption. Now he and Sophia could move forward, free from the past and ready to embrace a future they would build together with love, respect, and the certainty that, despite life's hardships, there is always a chance to begin anew. And so we reach the end of Lucas and Sophia's touching journey of resilience, true love, and redemption. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the upcoming stories we'll be sharing. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If you were in Lucas's position, what would you have done upon reuniting with Mariana? Would you have shown the same compassion, or do you think it would be difficult to leave the past behind? Let us know in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us, and we'd love to hear how you would face this situation. Also, feel free to suggest themes for future stories and share this video with anyone who loves inspiring stories like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.